The number of professional sports franchises had just begun to multiply, but by the end of the decade, there would be so many that few sports fanatics could even come up with the nicknames of all the teams. New names and faces flashed to eminence, as always. They made themselves stars by their achievements and personalities, but it was television that identified them and showed them up close and personal to the American sporting public. From pro football players to Olympic gymnasts, the stars seemed to shine more brilliantly than ever, magnified by the television lens, portrayed in glowing color on the home screen. Player contracts that had been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars were now in the millions. Television and sports, it became crystal clear in the 70s, were really made for each other. Well, today, as the 70s start to fade from the ever-glowing tube, we're going to look back over our shoulders one more time. Howard Cosell will be here to cover boxing, football, and baseball, and the rest, well, let's begin. The year 1970 was a most accurate scene set for the decade that was to come. So many things happened that year. Kansas City of the AFL beat Minnesota of the NFL in the Super Bowl in January. Later in the year, the leagues merged, but the old AFL went out in style. 1970 was the year that UCLA, under coach John Wooden, won the third of 7 straight national college basketball titles with play like this. The New York Knicks, after a quarter century of trying, finally won the NBA Professional Basketball Championship, led by an injured Willis Reed, number 19. Bobby Orr marked himself as hockey's man of the 70s, with goals like this one in overtime that gave Boston the Stanley Cup. Al Unser of the racing Unser brothers won the Indianapolis 500. It would be the first of 3 for him in the decade. Billie Jean King met Margaret Court of Australia in a marathon women's final at Wimbledon. Mrs. Court would be the winner, only the second woman to achieve the Grand Slam. She did it in 1970. When Pelé led Brazil to the World Cup, it looked like the end of a great career. And yet later in the 70s, he would make Americans aware of the world's most popular game. Jack Nicklaus won the British Open in a playoff on the old course at St. Andrews. In doing so, he broke the heart of Doug Sanders, who came so close. Baltimore's Brooks Robinson was a magician at third base in the World Series as the Orioles won it. Muhammad Ali returned to the ring after a 3.5-year exile. The best was yet to come. And for pure last-minute heroics, there was the field goal of Tom Dempsey. The kicker with the malformed right foot was with the New Orleans Saints. They trailed Detroit with 2 seconds to go. Tom would have to kick from his own 37-yard line.
2 seconds left. Here's the snap. The ball is down. Dempsey kicks. It's on the way. It is good. It's good. It's good. The Saints have won. The Saints have won. The stadium is wild. Dempsey has been
1970 set the scene for the decade, all right. It was a very good year.
17. Dempsey with a 63-yard field goal.
That's Coach Johnson. He's from the college. Looks like he's worried about his problem dandruff. I wish he'd ask me.
Mr. Owens, I need a shampoo.
Ever try Tegrin?
Can it really work on my itching and flaking?
Well, in a national survey, 3 out of 4 dermatologists judged Tegrin's medication effective in fighting even problem dandruff.
I'll give it a tryout.
Hey, how's that dandruff problem?
Tegrin's a winner, Mr. Owens.
Prove it to yourself. Tegrin works.
Whoops! Out of House of Windsor cigars again. House of Windsor Palmers, please. Yes. Let me show you another brand. Don't you know me? Is there a reward out for you? Look, House of Windsor's my cigar. Tastes good. Has a mild imported wrapper, choice rich tasting tobaccos inside, and it's triple sealed for freshness. House of Windsor cigars. Ooh. House of Windsor cigars. They taste like they ought to cost more.
The Sugar Bowl. Undefeated Alabama in a must-win game in the scramble for the national championship battles highly ranked Arkansas. New Year's Day on ABC.
Major League Baseball entered the decade in a sea of tranquility and closed it out in a sea of turmoil. A turmoil belied by booming attendance figures that reflected a resurgent popularity in the so-called national pastime. The decade was populated by tragedies. Roberto Clemente dying while on a mission of mercy. And, of course, the terrible slaying of Lyman Bostock and the airplane crash that took the life of the strong-willed Thurman Munson. History of a sort was made with the appointment of the first black manager, Frank Robinson, by the Cleveland Indians. An end of an era was reflected in the retirement of the incomparable ball player Willie Mays.
But as you know, it always comes a time for someone to get out. And I look at the kids over here, the way they are playing and the way they are fighting for themselves tells me one thing. Willie, say goodbye to America. Thank you very much.
Then there was the death of the most unconquerable man I have ever known, the man who changed the face of sport in this nation, Jackie Roosevelt Robinson. I did the last interview ever done with Jack, and I used the word unconquerable advisedly, as you will see when you watch this excerpt of that talk.
Oh, I think I've had a great life, Howard. I'm very pleased. I've lived over 50 years. I've overcome many things. I've had a great family. I have a great family. I had a greater family, but I'm very pleased with the things. I don't know anything that I would do to change what has happened. I've been very grateful. People have been awfully nice, and we've combined, I think, the talents that God gave us with good fortune, and we've come out well, I think. I'm very pleased.
The decade saw another ball player who in a different way would not be conquered. He is center fielder Curt Flood, and he elected to challenge the sacred clause of baseball, the reserve clause, the clause that bound one man to one team forever in the case of Flood against Kuhn. He lost, and he is paid heavily for that loss. Why did he do it? Let him tell you himself.
A well-paid slave is nonetheless a slave.
But Curt Flood's efforts were not in vain. The slaves were set free when an arbitrator named Seitz declared pitchers Dave McNally and Andy Messersmith free agents. Free agency had begun. One of those to profit, and the first thing he did was publicly thank Curt Flood, was Rod Carew, the hitter of the decade. 6 times he led the American League in batting, and in '77 had a brief assault at the 400 mark. The ball player of the decade, the man who went to Philadelphia as a free agent, was Pete Rose. Mr. Hustle, they call him, and you can see why. In 1978, he set a National League record, hitting safely in 44 consecutive games. In that same year, he became a member of the 3,000 hit club. And during the 10-year span, he hit safely for 200 times or more in 6 different seasons. Nolan Ryan was a pitcher to be noted in the decade. With that whizzing fastball, he threw 4 no-hitters, 7 one-hitters, struck out 383 in '73, and he became the ball player as a free agent who signed the first $1 million a year contract with Houston. For controversy, another free agent, and for consistent production, Reggie Jackson. Jackson, with the Oakland A's, the first to bring the new sartorial style to baseball, establishing himself with the long ball, the home run. But he didn't just do it with Oakland. He did it with the New York Yankees, too. And there, in the Fenway Park dugout, the famed altercation with manager Billy Martin. It didn't stop even there. Remember the 1977 World Series? Goodbye. And so, on 3 pitches in that series, Reggie Jackson would hit 3 home runs, an achievement mightier than Babe Ruth.
Goodbye.
Reggie Jackson, in his most memorable moment ever, a signal figure of the decade. Reggie Jackson would go out and greet the fans of New York at that moment. But in the decade, there was a man named Hank Aaron. Hammerin' Henry, they would call him, as he won the race for Ruth in Atlanta with a 715th career home run. Henry Aaron, the man who did what everyone said could not be done. So did Lou Brock. He stole 118 bases in a season, breaking Maury Will's record, and he broke Ty Cobb's career stolen base record. He also reached the 3,000 hit club during the decade. And as for Yaz, the first American League player to combine in achievement, getting 3,000 hits and right there hitting his 400th home run. It was a banner decade for Tom Seaver, who was traded during the decade from the Mets to Cincinnati. In 8 of the 10 years, he struck out 200 or more men. And you remember that memorable 1975 World Series, the Red Sox against the Reds, 6th game and 12th inning. Carlton Fisk at
the 70s. Truly the new golden age of sport. The number of professional sports begins, the 1980s. There's always a special feeling when that happens, a sense of anticipation and mystery as to what lies ahead. The 80s will write their own story as we watch. The past sometimes can give at least a clue as to what might be coming. Hello, I'm Jim McKay. When the 1970s opened, Wide World of Sports was less than 10 years old. So was jockey Steve Cawthon. The number of professional sports franchises had just begun to multiply, but by the end of the decade, there would be so many that few sports fanatics could even come up with the nicknames of all the teams. New names and faces flashed to eminence, as always. They made themselves stars by their achievements and personalities, but it was television that identified them and showed them up close and personal to the American sporting public. From pro football players to Olympic gymnasts, the stars seemed to shine more brilliantly than ever, magnified by the television lens, portrayed in glowing color on the home screen. Player contracts that had been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars were now in the millions. Television and sports, it became crystal clear in the 70s, were really made for each other. Well, today, as the 70s start to fade from the ever-glowing tube, we're going to look back over our shoulders one more time. Howard Cosell will be here to cover boxing, football, and baseball, and the rest, well, let's begin. The year 1970 was a most accurate scene set for the decade that was to come. So many things happened that year. Kansas City of the AFL beat Minnesota of the NFL in the Super Bowl in January. Later in the year, the leagues merged, but the old AFL went out in style.